Millions of years ago, Earth belonged to creatures we can barely imagine, a planet untouched by human hands. There were no cities, no steel, no machines, and certainly no precision instruments tracking the passage of time. Humanity had not even appeared. Now imagine breaking open a piece of ancient rock from that prehistoric world and finding inside it a mechanical chronometer, a device of engineered gears and deliberate design, something that was built to measure time. If even one of these discoveries is real, then our understanding of history is incomplete, because the Nebraska chronometer isn't the only object that appears where it shouldn't exist. In this video, we're counting down 5 mysterious artifacts. Nebraska chronometer. 1912, Central Nebraska. The summer sun burned over an open cut of pale sediment as a fossil crew carved into Miocene rock. Stone laid down millions of years before humans ever walked the plains. They were expecting bones. Instead, a shovel struck metal. Not loose scrap, not farm debris. Metal inside solid rock. At first, it looked ordinary, a curved, dark edge pressed against pale stone, something you might toss in the back of a pickup truck. But this wasn't topsoil. This wasn't recent fill. It was sealed inside geological layers dated to the Miocene epoch, millions of years before human hands shaped iron. And that's the contradiction. Metal tools did not exist then. Humans did not exist then. Nothing capable of precision engineering existed then. Yet, there it was. Extraction slowed to a crawl. Measured strikes. Photographs. If this was contamination, they would find the intrusion path. They didn't. When the object finally came free, conversation stopped. One of the crew reportedly stepped back in disbelief. Because in that moment, everyone understood the same thing. This did not belong in this layer of time. It was circular, heavy, roughly the size of a dinner plate. Along its rim were evenly spaced grooves, clean, deliberate divisions, not fractures, not stress lines. Under magnification, the spacing became undeniable. It looked like a dial. It would be like finding a machine steel watch sealed inside a Tyrannosaurus skeleton. Technology buried in an age that never knew hands like ours. It should not exist in that layer of history. Laboratory analysis confirmed the surrounding rock dated to the Miocene. The stratigraphy was intact. The sediment had lithified undisturbed. Geology is not guesswork. Miocene rock is Miocene rock. The metal itself complicated things further. It didn't match common industrial alloys. It showed none of the extreme corrosion expected from immense geological age. It did not resemble any known natural mineral concretion, and nature does not machine evenly spaced measurement like grooves into solid metal. Official explanations came quickly. A modern object forced downward by erosion, a rare geological formation mimicking design, an unnoticed fracture in the rock layer. At first glance, that makes sense, but none addressed the central problem. The surrounding stone showed no disturbance, no intrusion channel, no secondary filling, no signs that anything had entered after formation. So it was labeled carefully, quietly, an anomaly, not a device, not evidence of lost technology, just unexplained. But the dating remains, the grooves remain, the intact sediment remains. If the Miocene layer is correctly dated, and geologists agree that it is, then something capable of shaping metal with mechanical precision existed millions of years before accepted history allows. Huejuelos stone. In 1889, workers were clearing ground near the edge of a dry, wind-carved basin in Audaliscoco, Mexico, when a pickaxe struck something smooth beneath the soil. Not bone. Not ordinary rock, something shaped. At first, it looked like just another stone pulled from the earth, but when it was lifted into the light, the men stopped. Carved into its surface was a figure, not an animal, not a simple symbol, a humanoid form with an elongated head, large almond-shaped eyes, a narrow body, thin limbs, almost anatomical in its precision. It didn't resemble indigenous petroglyph styles of the region. It didn't resemble colonial art. It didn't resemble anything typical of 19th century Mexico. It looked deliberate and disturbingly familiar. The stone became known as the Audaliscoco stone. At a glance, skeptics dismissed it as a crude carving, but under closer inspection, the lines were consistent, intentional. The proportions were balanced. The figure was not random. It was composed. And here's the contradiction. The layer it reportedly came from was not a modern surface find. It was pulled from consolidated sediment, buried, not displayed. If authentic to its context, it predates modern fascination with extraterrestrials, predates science fiction imagery, predates the now iconic gray archetype by decades. This was 1889, long before Roswell, long before flying saucers filled newspapers, long before alien imagery became cultural shorthand. Yet the carving resembles what the modern world would later describe as extraterrestrial. It would be like finding a photograph of a jet airplane etched into medieval stone centuries before flight was invented. So what is it? Official explanations came quickly. A hoax, a later carving planted for attention, a misinterpretation of indigenous symbolism. And if it wasn't planted, if it truly emerged from where it was reported, then someone in the 19th century or earlier carved a figure that mirrors imagery humanity would not widely imagine for nearly 100 years. Coincidence? Cultural projection? Or something else entirely? Because the Audaliscoco stone forces an uncomfortable question. Are some images discoveries or memories? And if this carving wasn't inspired by modern myth, then what inspired it?
Sequala Chakraya. Carved into a flat granite face inside the ancient Ramiswana Park is a circular diagram that does not look like anything else from its time. At first glance, it appears decorative, a simple carving, just lines in stone. But the closer you look, the stranger it becomes. The carving is nearly 2 meters wide, perfectly circular, divided into concentric rings filled with symbols, geometric patterns, and orderly segments arranged with precision. This is known as the Sequala Chakraya, and no one agrees on what it is. It sits just beside massive stone basins believed to have been used by royalty during the Anuradhapura period. The surrounding architecture is unmistakably ancient Sri Lankan, but this carving doesn't resemble typical Buddhist iconography. It doesn't resemble common mandalas. It doesn't resemble standard decorative motifs of the region. Instead, it looks technical, structured, almost schematic. Some see a cosmological map, a representation of the universe as understood in early Buddhist cosmology, multiple realms, circular worlds, layered existence. That's the official explanation, but others point to something more unsettling. The layout resembles orbital paths, planetary divisions, even atomic diagrams. The symmetry is striking, the segmentation deliberate. It would be like discovering a blueprint of a solar system etched into stone centuries before telescopes existed. And here's the contradiction. There is no inscription explaining it, no textual reference directly describing this carving, no definitive documentation from the era labeling its purpose. It simply exists, carved, precise, silent. The grooves are deliberate, the geometry intentional. This was not random decoration scratched by idle hands. Whoever carved it understood proportion, and yet its meaning remains uncertain. Some researchers argue it represents Buddhist cosmology, the wheel of the universe. Others suggest it could be symbolic ritual art. And then there are those who believe it encodes astronomical knowledge far more advanced than assumed for its period. But no consensus has emerged because the Sequala Chakraya does something unusual. It looks modern. It looks like a diagram. It looks like something meant to explain a system. And that's what unsettles people. Ancient art usually tells stories. This looks like information. So what were they mapping? A spiritual universe? A physical one? Or something we still don't fully understand? Because if this carving truly represents advanced cosmological knowledge, then the past may have understood the structure of reality in ways we are only beginning to rediscover.
Mitchell Hedges' skull. Deep in the jungles of what is now Belize, among the crumbling stone structures of a Maya city, swallowed by vines and heat, a discovery was made that would ignite nearly a century of controversy. It wasn't gold. It wasn't a carved stela. It was a skull, clear, transparent, carved from a single block of quartz crystal, life-sized, perfectly proportioned. Today, it's known as the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull. According to the story, it was found during excavations at the ancient city of Lewontin in the 1920s when it emerged from debris near a collapsed structure. It didn't look ancient. It looked engineered. The skull is anatomically detailed: cheekbones, jawline, eye sockets, even subtle curvature along the cranium. The lower jaw is detachable, carved as a separate moving piece that fits seamlessly into the upper skull. Quartz is not a soft material. It ranks a 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. Modern gem cutters use diamond-tipped tools and rotary equipment to shape it. Yet the skull was attributed to a pre-Columbian civilization that had no metal tools, no power drills, no modern polishing systems. And that's where the tension begins. If it is genuinely ancient, then whoever carved it achieved a level of precision that rivals modern lapidary work. Microscopic examinations have shown extremely smooth surfaces, highly polished planes, symmetry that appears intentional rather than accidental. Some researchers argue it could have taken years, possibly decades of continuous abrasion using sand and primitive tools to achieve such detail. Others are not convinced. Skeptics point out that similar crystal skulls surfaced in the late 19th century through European antiquities markets. Some were later determined to have been carved using modern rotary tools. And that complicates everything. Because if the Mitchell Hedges skull was not excavated in situ, if documentation from the dig is incomplete or inconsistent, then its origin shifts from ancient temple to modern workshop, a 20th century creation marketed as a relic. But here's what keeps the debate alive. No definitive proof has closed the case. No inscription dates it. No clear quarry has been linked to it. And the object itself remains physically extraordinary. Hold it to the light and it refracts. Internal fractures create shifting prisms. The eye sockets catch illumination in a way that makes the skull appear almost aware. It would be like discovering a flawless glass sculpture in a medieval castle centuries before glassblowing was mastered. If ancient, it rewrites assumptions about Maya craftsmanship. If modern, it becomes one of the most convincing archaeological deceptions ever produced. So, what is it? A relic of advanced lost skill? A masterful forgery? Or something in between? A product of colonial fascination with ancient mystery? Because the Mitchell Hedges skull forces a sharper question. How much of what we call ancient is truly ancient? And how many objects sit in museums today, suspended between artifact and illusion, waiting for certainty that may never